Welcome to Waking Wave. My name is Genevieve. In this episode is an incredible and brave sharing of stories by my friend Stephanie, as she showed us around her farm near Eugene, Oregon. She opened up about the tragic loss of her daughter, Ellery, and the resilience needed to carry on.
I just know what it is to, never get to say goodbye to your child, or 1 second they're here and the next they're gone, and that's very present.
In order to introduce Stephanie properly, please allow me a couple minutes to get you caught up. By the end of July in 2021, after exploring 12 states in the west of the United States, we arrived in Oregon, where we spent a week in the areas of Eugene and Medford, catching up with my brother-in-law's family. It had been 7 years since I had seen the Duncans, and it was amazing to witness the transformation of each member of the family. Mike, recently separated from 18 years of engineering in corporate America, moved on to forge a new business, creating custom products from CNC routing and engraving.
It kind of grew from a hobby that I would do for fun into I'm making money with this now.
Kelly had recently suffered the loss of a friend and awakened to a new kind of life.
I don't know, just to be able to cope. It was like a coping mechanism.
And Megan, only 20 years old, was basking in the success of her new business and TikTok popularity, creating custom t-shirt designs.
And now this is her second job.
What's that big laugh? During this week-long visit, we kept hearing stories about the neighbors, and Mike arranged for us to meet them. We get to meet Morris, and through him, I was able to dive into the world of beekeeping.
I mean, if they were near as aggressive as people thought, there wouldn't be any bees because they die when they sting.
And toward the end of our visit, we finally met Stephanie. From the stories I heard from Mike, I thought we would be talking about ranching and farming, and maybe down-to-earth living. But I quickly realized it would be an array of more intimate subjects. From the first time we met, we bonded immediately. Our conversations were raw, truthful, and deep. I asked if she would be comfortable talking on camera, and she looked forward to it. The following day, Glenn and I arrived at her doorstep to a warm welcome, but we needed to disinfect ourselves first.
Have you guys been on other farms before coming here?
In Washington,
I'm careful when people...
We started the tour of her land by cleaning off our shoes and legs. Not because of the raging COVID strains of 2021, but because her sheep were very sensitive to new and foreign bacteria. She took us down the hill behind her house, revealing acres of farm and agricultural lands. After rounding up and stowing away her dog, she was free to show us one of the barns.
She's such a handful. I always leave these doors open, but at night the girls come in here and they get some hay, the little lambs. That's a little creek feed. So they have this special little gate here and only the little lambs can come through it. There are definitely some resident cougars around here, and I just kind of keep them safe. But they hang out a lot under this awning in the winter.
Can we show them to Glenn?
Yeah, absolutely.
We headed down into the field to get a closer look at this rare breed of sheep. Through the recent use of artificial insemination, Gotland sheep are now being established in the United States. And Stephanie is one of only a few people breeding these rare animals.
They came from New Zealand, and we implanted them in a couple of my ewes.
Gotland sheep are known for having a very docile disposition and form strong bonds to their shepherds.
He likes his shepherds. He's a little wary of strangers.
They have some of the softest and finest wool of any breed.
And that's fine wool. Wow. So that's the softest wool you could find.
They're usually raised for their amazing fleece and heavily desired, tender and tasty meat.
We were looking at starting to raise a small breed of sheep again for meat for us. Now I am able to wear their wool, and it's such a joy, to take them from babies and harvest their first fleeces. And I work with a mill that's women owned, and so she processes it for me. And I have met women who are incredible knitters and who will knit beautiful things, and I'm learning new skills. I just love it,
Stephanie told us about her need for self-reliance and about her upbringing in France.
And my brother took over the family farm when I was still in France, so over 25 years ago now. The farm was just a traditional, conventional farm, but for the last many years now, they have been transitioning, and now they actually have certified organic soils. So that was really cool for me to see that.
She took us around the farm and showed us her large vegetable gardens. She grows enough vegetables to feed her family and enough extra to help feed the community.
I want to show people that you don't have to have hundreds of acres to farm.
Right.
You know, there's a place for small farms. There's definitely a movement, you know, and I use all the manure that the sheep are producing to make soil, to build soil, you know. It's really amazing. It really works.
You feed about 15 families
a week? Yeah, about.
Wow.
Yeah, for about 4 or 5 months. That's, you know, and then I feed my family pretty much all year long. I close this in the winter and I keep a third of it with the sheep, so the heat of the sheep and everything. This is such a nice little biosystem there, you know. So I can have greens all the time. I grow lots of cabbages, so we make big pots of sauerkraut that then we can eat through the winter.
It wasn't long before we started talking about much deeper topics.
Hillary is a daughter
Yeah,
who passed away when she was 4.
yeah. She and I were in a car accident, which is its story in itself, you know. A very the kind of you know, kids, you hear, you know, kids can get sick and sometimes you lose a child to a sickness, but this was very different.
Mm-hmm.
This was very different. We were in the car together and our car got hit by a young man who was speed racing his friend on the road. So just really kind of
When our conversations began to shift, we agreed to head back up to the house to sit down and talk in the shade of the summer sun. We had talked about her daughter the day before, but I was still amazed at how open and brave she was, and her ability to bounce between subjects, to reflect on the most tragic days of her life, and still have inspiration to talk about current passions in daily life. Once we sat down, we just talked, open and honestly. I don't want to perform the misjustice of paraphrasing or creating a story of our conversation. So here it is.
it just kind of all came together.
What do you mean by when we were able to move back into the
Yeah,
land?
so when Ellery passed away, we moved off the land and we moved back in town in a neighborhood with some people that were very meaningful to us and who
Because
helped us.
you needed support.
Yeah, we needed to just kind of rebuild ourselves and Paul was finishing up vet school at that point, so it was these were a very, very challenging time, and Roman was on his way to the UK and just all this stuff happened.
He had already gone?
So no, he left about a year and a half after Ellery passed. Yeah.
And he knew that's what he was doing.
He wanted to do this. I think the year after she passed away was very challenging, and he just kind of needed a clean break from that.
And so how did you manage to find the strength to support him? Because you had a grown-up one, a more grown-up one.
I know. Well, you know, having him was really the reason why it was never an option for me to not bounce back from this. You know, he was just a driving force. And my husband, you know, a lot of people, I think, when they lose a child, they end up going their separate way. But for me, it was, I think for Paul and I, it was, you know, we were such a rock to each other through that. And we processed the grief very differently, still do, you know.
Yeah.
He's very inward, and I need to talk about it. I have days where they're Ellery's days, you know. Every year I get together with a little group of friends and we honor her and talk about her. And for Paul, it's very different.
It's really interesting because yesterday you mentioned that the land, the sheep were therapeutic for you. And everything you talk about actually are things that I've learned for myself in the past few years, including the importance of body work today in dealing with the energy of the stuck energy of trauma. and it's really interesting that you found it apparently alone, whereas I needed a lot of research and getting with people who had more experience, reading a lot. But it sounds like to you it came naturally.
Yeah,
to
you
talk
know,
about
it's not like I'm not a superwoman, you know, it's not, but there was really great value. So, you know, so I grew up in a farming family in a fairly rural part of France. We didn't talk about feelings very much growing up. That's not something, we didn't go to the shrink. We didn't, you know, the tough times, we just worked through them on our own. So that already like set my mind for, you know, it was imprinted in me. You know, it was not super easy for me to reach out to psychotherapy to help me through that. I did do it. And it was helpful, you know. It was helpful. Most of the psychotherapy that I did was with a person who was very literate in wisdom tradition, and he was basically able to help me lay out, okay, what happens after death? You know, there are all these different things that people are thinking. And I basically, I mean, it might sound very simplistic, but I basically, because I did not grow up, I was not brought up with any religious background, I picked up what made sense for me.
Right.
I picked up what made sense. I just needed enough reassurance that I could get up in the morning and move forward, you know? And so, yes, a lot of the work I did by walking the land, working the land, and finding solace in all these little activities. Being very busy all the time.
Yeah.
I'm a busybody.
Were you before?
I've always been,
Okay.
but I'm probably more so, even more to some extent, you know. But I'm trying to learn how to slow down. And part of slowing down has been to reach out a little bit to people. So I just recently started doing a little bit of EMDR, so a little bit of trauma therapy.
Yeah.
I just started, but it's a big step for me. You know, just trying to unstuck some of the, you know.
I've heard great results with the EMDR.
I have too, so I'm trying it, and it's mostly, you know, because losing a child affects my parenting skills with my younger child.
How so?
You know, I have a lot of fears. I just know what it is to, you know, never get to say goodbye to your child, or 1 second they're here and the next they're gone, you know, and that's very present, you know. So and Peter's a very active kid, you know, we do a lot of active stuff, and like, you know, we go and we ride bikes on those trails, and I know there's, like, if he fell, he could hurt himself. You know, that's very palpable for me.
Right.
And we still do it. I try not to let fear run my life, but at times it's hard. You know, so I'm hoping that this work will help me, unblock some of those, you know, images, sort of rewire some of those feelings and sentiments. So yeah, taking care of myself, you know, I started taking care of my body a little more, doing a little bit of physical therapy. I was recently in a little bike accident, and I just went to see the physical therapist right away, and I was very aware that as he was working on me, some of the shock was leaving my body, you know, and that's all. Like,
it was something you knew before? Like, is this new to you?
You know, I have, after the accident, I did work with somebody like that, and that really helped me, and I just knew.
When you say somebody like that, who was
just
this?
a physical therapist that, you know, not like your typical PT that gives you exercises to do home, but somebody who really tuned a little more into energy work, you know.
The wind picked up and continued through most of our conversation.
You know, again, because I am so pragmatic, you know, I see things and I see how things work, and so all this energy talk is, you know, I like to see results, like it has to be tangible.
It sounds a bit hippie.
Yes, like woo-woo, they say here, you know. So I'm not, You know, sometimes I'll say, "Oh, I'm not even that woo," but I'm willing to go with the flow, and it is helping me. You know, it is helping me. Yeah.
I concur. I mean, I've been to the same kind of trail of being getting away from my own body, but this connection with the body also, it sounded a bit woo to me for a while.
Yeah.
Until I so desperately needed it that my body failed me, and it started communicating with me in ways that I didn't know. 5 years ago, I approached rebirthing workshops, rebirth breathing, breath work, and before I could, learn so much about it, things happened that were beyond my control. Eventually, what I did was opening my heart, relaxing my entire body through over oxygenation. Traumas and the energy of trauma that was stuck is actually moving. The movement, it doesn't necessarily feel so great.
No, I know. I mean, I felt that,
Yeah.
I just felt it the last time I was on the table. I was so incredibly relaxed, and it's almost hard to feel it. It almost makes me feel, and I'm always like, I definitely need to be in control of things, and so it's hard to let it go that way, to be feeling such an intensity in the relaxation, in the hands of somebody helping me get there.
There's a lot of trust involved.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so I know exactly what you're talking about.
It often comes with a great pain experienced in life in order to unlock and open up these channels that we were not ready to channel and hear again.
And I think that's why I am coming to a place in my life where the work needs to start again. I feel like it's almost like the second phase of it, So, it's interesting because so there is the forgiveness of the two young men who made this happen. I know these people are in a community that is not so far from here, I know they were put away for quite some years, which brings no relief whatsoever, I know my husband has reached out to the one who actually hit my car in the hope that maybe there could be a little bit of a conversation happen whilst he was still in a place, and there has been no response to it, So, yes, where to go from there? For the most part, we don't talk about it very much yet. I can't imagine it will last forever, but we don't talk about it very much yet. For me, it's also, even though I know that I didn't do anything wrong that day on the road, I was the caregiver of my daughter, and she died in my care.
You survived. And
I survived, and so there's a huge amount of guilt. And it pops up here and there. I'll have like really intense moments where I can just embody everything that happened, and I just, it's almost like it's physically aching, and it'll pass, and it passes, because time is your biggest ally. Time, just you put time between something and
how long ago was this?
It was 11 and a half years ago.
Wow.
Yeah. So time almost makes everything bearable on the day-to-day, But big things, so guilt and forgiveness, big chapters that I'm feeling are needing to be tackled down. This past year, this COVID year has really been a year for me of, and just almost being 50 now. I'm going to turn 50 this year, and I feel like I need to I have felt a need to take care of my physical body a lot, and then these things have come up, you know. So I'm starting the work again. Yeah, for sure.
I noticed that you say again, like it's a constant repetition. Huh?
Yeah. But the forgiveness is, yeah. I don't even know where to start. I can't talk about it with very many people, you know. Like I can't talk about it with my parents because they get really angry, and that doesn't help me, you know.
What do they get angry at?
Oh, just
How does it express?
like they really can't. They can't fathom any of it, you know. This was so wrong for them, and there's no other. And yet you know, because I'm sure you've met some of these people, and maybe we were even like that when we were younger. We did things that were stupid. Mm-hmm. You know, we had stupid behaviors. Where
we just didn't meet what would bring this kind of consequences.
Exactly. Or we get lucky and we never hurt anybody. Like, you know, these young men just fell out of luck on carrying on their stupidity, you know. I mean, to tell you the truth, you know, it's parents of these kids, you know. I mean, they're not super young, but I'll call them kids for lack of a better. I mean, they were upset, and for them thinking that we had something to do with the fact that they were going to go to jail for a while, but that's completely beyond our control, you know. That there has been no attempt made on their part to try to find any kind of closure, you know, or just simply say, I am so sorry. You know, this was never done. And it's hard. It's hard. You know, I went through this period of time where I was so aware when they were going to come out of jail, and I have to say, in all honesty, I was a little worried. I was actually kind of worried that they were so upset that they had been put away, that they would try and come and hurt me and my family and my other children. That's what I was really worried about. Yeah. You know, I guess, you know, one of the big things is that it's hard to have faith in people. You know, part of the reason why I am so aware that I have so much admiration for what you guys are doing now is because you're going to be running into so many people from so many different, you know, backgrounds and everything. And to me, that's terrifying. Part of the reason I live the life I live is because I have a lot of fears. I don't have fears about wildlife. I don't have fears about the work that I do where I could get hurt. I don't have fears. I have simple fears of people sometimes, you know. And I'm aware that this contributed to exacerbating. I just don't have faith in people a lot of the time.
It's a great challenge. Huh?
Yeah,
It's a very, very great challenge. And it's very hard to embrace the duality of life. It's very hard to say, you know, when you love light, it's very hard to conceive that you wouldn't be able to love it if there was no darkness.
Yeah.
Loving something does not mean hating its opposite. It in itself, even if we say so, there is at least a form of reverence for the opposite, because without the opposite, this thing we love so much wouldn't be possible. And I see it in all our anxiety. I saw my niece coming to Israel visit me for the first time, and I saw her becoming sick as the time to leave approached, literally becoming sick, cramps. The one thing we are not really doing well is nurturing the ability to accept change in life, and life is nothing else but change. It's a constant. We can find some sort of what we call stability and routine, but life is constant change, and kids actually are much more malleable, much better fit for this, and we actually tend, with our modern society, the way we live, we actually tend to build them for something different. My niece was going really sad, and in the bus I saw her, and I was becoming very pensive, and I told her, I know that you feel sadness now, and because I do. The reason I know you feel sadness is because I do, but I would like to remind you something. I would like to remind you that the reason you feel sadness is because you know you're gonna miss me and Salome, my daughter. But that without this missing part, it would mean nothing this whole time we spent together. The love that we built is creating the pain that's gonna come for our separation, and that pain, in that pain lies the greatest beauty, because lies our love. So she cried. She cried, but then arriving at the airport, I had a 10-year-old child who was a 9-year-old child at the time, who was actually cheerful and who didn't cry anymore and say goodbye to me with a big smile. And yeah, they are much more malleable than we think.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Yeah. The darkness allows you to see the light. That is so true. You know, that is so true. Recently I had a second degree cousin who's, you know, she's my son's age basically. And she sent me a post and she said, what do you do? How do you do it? How can you be so positive? And I was a little bit taken aback, but I think the glory in that is that somehow I managed to show her a little bit of light that she was missing, you know. And I know that I was only able to do this because of my past experiences. That was a very pragmatic example of it, you know. This happened to me, and therefore I speak about this that way. And she saw it, and she needed it at that time. So this was like a very beautiful experience, and also an experience that led me to think, wow, she needs me, you know, she needs me, and now I make a point of engaging with her, being sort of a place where she can drop me a message anytime. You know, we're still very far away from each other, but I find messages from her, and I send her messages, you know, and hopefully we can help each other, you know. And so the point being that none of this would have happened. She would still have needed something, but none of this would have happened if I hadn't gone through all these dark times. Yeah. And that still doesn't make what happened acceptable, or, you know, but
it is the fact that it's unacceptable that makes it possible.
Yeah, exactly. You're right. So right.
I have the very same feeling
Yeah.
about, you know, having a mother who was extremely violent physically, but also very neglecting and absent emotionally for my little sisters. And so I became a child mother. I became a mother as a child of those two little sisters. But what my mother could not do for me and for my sister, she had me at 16. She was pregnant of me at 16 years old with a much older man. But my aunt, my mom's little sister, passed away from a cerebral accident, and her two daughters went through hell on earth. But today, my mother is acting with my first cousins as a mother, and they need it. And it's just perfect that what my mother didn't find in her to do with us, she's getting a chance to do it there, because otherwise my little cousins would have nothing to themselves. So we built a system, we found a system where we built a family to ourselves, and I became the matriarch of this family. In the absence of a relationship between my mother and us, her daughters, there is a possibility for my cousins to find motherhood.
Yeah.
And I found motherhood elsewhere.
Yes.
I
yes.
did.
Yeah, talking about forgiveness, huh? Yeah.
Yeah. And again, it's a process. Forgiveness is just like acceptance.
Yeah.
I think one of the best revelation for me was that acceptance is not about accepting what we already agree with. Acceptance is a process, and it's the very allowance of what we don't agree with. Acceptance is needed when the other votes differently, when the other thinks differently, when the others disagree. This is what acceptance, when acceptance comes into play. And so it's a repeating cycle, and it is the very same cycle of life where there is no inhaling without exhaling, and there is no exhaling without the inhaling. And loving when we inhale, it might feel better for some people than exhaling, or vice versa. But it doesn't mean we can hate the other, because without it we can't have it all. I can't have life. Cannot have life. So these moments we share, just as this one, are meaningful. There's no just you giving and us receiving. It's like, and I think it's clear in.
It's an exchange.
It's an exchange.
For sure.
It's yeah.
You know, in spite of the fact that I am here a lot alone, doing whatever, feeling whatever, sometimes crying, sometimes being angry or whatever, you know, it reminds me that, yes, you know, we need each other to share with, you know, and it's very timely with where I am in my life, you know, it always is. Yeah, it's really amazing. And coming at the end of this COVID strain, you know, I mean, I don't know where we'll be in 6 months. We might be back to where we were, but yeah, so it's all very timely. You know, one of the things, you know, the work of forgiveness, I think part of the reason why it hasn't been fully addressed in my situation is because, in a way, I have tried to forget about it. You know, and I think that's where I'm at, and I know it's not sustainable. I know it will come up, you know. You know, I will be, in all honesty, I will say, after the accident, like there is a part of me that contemplated for a very brief time to forget that I had even had that child. You know, because her life was so short, why can't I just forget about it? See what I mean? I mean, it's impossible. But it's something that came to my mind. I think her brother tried to do that. I think her 14-year-old brother tried to do that. It was so unbearable that I think it happened, right? You know?
During parts of our conversation, the wind became so strong that nothing in the recording was audible. At times, in the climax of a story or topic. Stephanie later talked about the significance of the wind in relation to changing beliefs about her daughter.
When we met yesterday, you mentioned something that you felt a couple of times about Hillary.
Yeah, the hands of... Yeah, I had two very first of all, when Ellery passed away, it was very, very windy, stormy January time. Lots of storms, rains, and rainbows, and storms, rains, and rainbows, and just this entire week that followed her passing. And we were able to bring back Ellery to some of our best friends' land and to bury her on their land. So she's actually kind of in a little sanctuary, and we have made around her like a little park, you know. So it's about 20 minutes from here, and we can go and spend time there and be there. And we made a little altar that was very, very, very simple, with just literally little pieces of wood. And we, for 10 days after we brought her back, there was always somebody there, sitting there and just being there. And we would take turns with all the people who showed up to help. And we always had candles. I burned candles at that place without ever stopping for probably close to a year. Wow. But that candle, that little candle that was hardly protected by anything, never went out in spite of the weather, in spite of the rain and the storm. It never went out. So one of the things is that in spite of all that has happened, I never really stopped eating and I never really stopped sleeping.
Wow.
So somehow there was a protective hand that was obviously caring for my well-being.
Your body knew.
Something new, you know. But I had a very vivid experience one night when I was really having a hard time falling asleep, and again, I am not woo, so I'm not trying to make up things, but I literally felt like a veil just sort of brushing against me, and it was gone. That's it, and I never felt it again, you know. And the last one, so there were 3 very meaningful things. And trust me, I've asked so many times, show me my daughter in my dreams. You know, I've just talked to whatever, the trees, and it's never happened. I have never dreamt of my daughter, ever, you know. So, but I was on a hike one day, and I was coming to the top of the hill, and I'm literally talking to myself and say, show me something that is really meaningful. And I come to the top, and as I'm coming, it's a cloudy day, and as I'm coming to the top, the sun just comes out, you know? So these were just little things, but very meaningful for me. Kind of, you know, you called it the hand of grace. For me, it was almost like the hand of God. And I'm not you know, it's not God in the sense of, you know, the specific God of this specific religious faith, you know? It's just something higher, something bigger.
Wait, there is this sentence that comes to my mind, and I forgot who said it, but we always ask for help, but we are not ready for it, to see it in the appearance of no help.
Right. Yeah, you know, for days and days I walked the land where she was buried, because we lived there for some time afterwards, and this land is owned by one of my dearest friend, who's a bit older than I am, and I would go to him and I would just be, I just want to know that she is okay, wherever she is, whatever happens. And my friend Rich would look at me and say, I think she has really tried to give to you much reassurance, you know. And it's true, because there were all these little things, you know, and these things are very meaningful, you know, they mattered. You know, the gift of reassurance, like it was never as palpable as it was in those moments. You know, the gift of reassurance. It's not like the gift of knowing for sure. It's not just the gift of knowing enough that you can move on and you can keep, you know, just enough faith to keep you going, just enough trust to keep you going, you know, just enough to work with.
Are we attached to the way things should come, the appearance of how it should appear to us, and in that are we attached to not wanting things to change, or only in the way we envision them?
Right. Exactly.
But what brings growth is meeting the unknown, the unplanned. This is in that lies the greatest joy we experienced from life were likely what we didn't expect. Even when we expect a child and there is this growing excitement, the surprise of what they look like when they are coming to life. I remember you know, knowing how Salome would look, she looked nothing like it, nothing. And I was like, where did she come from? You know, like, why is she tall? We're not tall. Why is her hair so straight, and why does she have so many of them when babies don't? Like, and yet the greatest joy comes from those unexpectations.
Right.
And so I think that the process of talking about it, the process of meeting others, is a reminder, and all we get really are reminders.
Yeah.
All we get are reminders that everything is in order.
Yeah.
I found some quietness in some expressions of Taoism, where it's about accepting life as it is. Even prayers, I caught myself wanting to stop praying, even when I was doing it, you know, oh, I hope, I wish, please, or whatever. And but that in itself, in asking, in the asking for something else, and I'm not talking about the thinking, that's very different, but the asking for something else, for a different outcome, for a bit of relief, lies non-acceptance of what is, and what if what is just perfectly in order. And so it's been a lot on my mind.
And I mean, and especially in our times, what if everything actually is perfectly in order, in the order of things?
On that, I get to a lot. What I've been really dealing with a lot is this idea of judgment. So we reach a point where we feel we become better, we become more green, we become greener and more ecological, and we do better for the world. But then immediately I met my self-righteousness, and so I go out and but why are they not doing it? And immediately come judgment. And what I learned in listening to people who studied trauma, who worked with trauma, I want to say, because studies doesn't really matter to me anymore, but who worked with trauma and really put themselves on the spot to help people who were traumatized, what I found is that there is no possibility for growth in the moment we are in judgment of others, of all of ourselves. The nervous system is simply not built, the human nervous system is simply not built for growing and learning once we are in judgment.
Interesting.
It's just simply not there. So in that aspect, when we are venting with a child and yelling and screaming to make him or her understand something, their nervous system, their brain is not capable of responding by learning. We might be venting, so in that moment we can ask ourselves, the only answer that I was finding is, like, in that moment we can ask ourselves, and someone said it yesterday, I think it was Mike, do I want to be right, or do I want to be happy? And yes, if I continue to yell and make my point, I can be right. But really, do I get what I wanted?
Yeah, it's so true.
Right?
So true.
And it brings comfort. It brings comfort that even in pain, there is the possibility for awakening. In pain, there is grace. And in that, when we see pain that comes from such a devastating event as losing a child or getting away from a loved one, or there is a form of reverence for that very human being who brought that kind of growth and allowed us to turn toward the world once more again.
Yes, you are right. lot of reverence for, you know, this little girl.
As it is just right now, we don't know Hillary, and yet what I feel, and I kind of suppose what Glenn is likely to be feeling right now, is there is care and love for what has been brought in this moment by Hillary, but
by the opportunity to talk about it, talk about her.
That is not nothing. That is no small thing. It's transforming me, and I know it for now. That much I know. It's transforming me for the rest of the road. That's not nothing at all. It's pretty huge.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity to talk about her and to talk about the whole experience of it, you know, and how I'm always reminded of how much it's shaped my life on this land. How a lot of what I do here is what we started together, you know. It's always been important to us to grow food, to live on the land, to be good stewards of the land, to teach that to our kids, you know. So it's good to be able to talk about it. And
thank you for speaking up. I was about gone when you spoke. I was about gone when you spoke, and everything changed, and I was like, my mission was to go back to convince Glenn, who got convinced in like 1 minute and 10 seconds of, can we stay? I met this amazing woman, and I'm sure you're gonna love it. And I didn't even speak yet about everything we were gonna speak about, and he said, yeah, okay. And I think he was set on leaving before that. But he said, yeah, sure.
Well, I'm so glad I got to meet you both. I'm sure you will. Yeah, just the thought of all the people you're gonna run into. Yeah,
it's amazing, right?
Amazing. It's really amazing.
But I think more than that, it's the people we're gonna run into with our heart and mind changed by this very encounter, and how it's already, and no question about it. It's like without making it anything romantic, we change every second, every nanosecond. We're changing ourselves, just transform. But there is no question about it. Something just changed now. Something deep. Because
something changed for me too. It's really good. Yeah, it was kind of I talked to Paul about it last night. I told Paul about it last night. There's a part of me that feels like, oh, Paul needs to be the one to meet these people.
I sensed that. I heard that yesterday.
Paul is the one who needs to be talking with you guys. I mean, you know, but again, you know, he's we all have different ways of dealing with grief, and yes, and we change too.
You know, I've been told to pick up trash on the beach when I see it, or ever, you know, and at least this is a good thing that I've been exposed to. But guess what? I was not doing it, and I was never leaving my trash.
Yes.
But I was not picking up the trash of someone else. And one day I went to the beach in the village I was working, but this time I was showing the village to friends. And one woman, who is an amazing woman, Debbie, found a plastic bag, because unfortunately you find them all, or fortunately, I don't know, you find them all over the floor, the ground as trash. She picked up a plastic bag and she started filling up while talking to us, absolutely not acknowledging anything about what she was doing, and then filled up the bag, closed it, and went on, continued. And then the first trash, she put it in, the first bin, she put it in, and I called her out on it, and she said, yeah, that's what I do, one bag. I can't fill up the entire thing. When you start, you're tempted. She said, I'm tempted to do more and more and more. But that's what I can do. And I decided that this is how I was doing it, feeling a bit better with myself, but not but stopping myself to not make it something crazy. And I started doing the same. And then one day I was on the beach in Caesarea in Israel, and I was doing my bag, and then I went to pick up, and when I took my towel to leave, these people called me out and said, "This is amazing what you're doing." And I told them, I've been trying to convince people of many things. I've been so self-righteous about so many things. And I realized that the moment I start doing what I believe in without trying to convince anyone, this is the moment I'm the most influential.
That is so true.
Because this is when I've been the most influenced by those people who never tried to change my heart. And instead of preaching, what might have been true, they just emulated it.
Yeah,
and
that is so true.
And let things happen, and people pick up, and that works with my daughter just as well.
Yeah, I need to do that more too. Actually, just realizing sometimes I do feel righteous.
We all do.
But why are they not doing this? My husband is really good about this. I really wish he could be here more, and he's such an introvert in so many ways. But he's such a great man. Oh my gosh. Just so much integrity.
Our conversation with Stephanie continued for a couple hours and forked into many topics as the batteries for our equipment died. I've never wanted this podcast to be guided, scripted, or anything other than natural conversations of what happens in the moment. So for this episode, we will leave it here. Stephanie's story and our many conversations off camera have been some of the most impactful for me in my personal journey, and I wanted to share parts of her story with you. I wish you the most healing of awakenings.